Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into something pretty intense. We're going to break down the core arguments of a controversial Arabic text by an author named Abdullah Bufim. Now, this is a deep dive into a very specific worldview, and our goal is simple, to lay out its internal logic, exactly as the author presents it. So let's get right to it. Right out of the gate, the author hits us with this powerful and honestly paradoxical claim. And make no mistake, this isn't just a throwaway line. This is the central idea, the very foundation of his entire argument. He's immediately forcing you to try and reconcile two loyalties that seem completely opposite, suggesting they are in fact the exact same thing. And that's it, right? That is the fundamental question this whole text is trying to answer. It's the puzzle at the very heart of this worldview. So how on earth does the author try to solve it? Let's take a look at the logic he uses to connect these seemingly impossible dots. Okay, so the core idea here is built on a theory of a grand deception. The text basically says that the very public, very hostile relationship we see between Israel and Iran, it's not real. He says it's a carefully constructed performance, a strategic illusion designed for one single purpose, to control and manipulate Sunni Muslims. What's so striking here is how absolute the author is about this. He claims it's hard for what he calls small minds to even wrap their heads around this concept. He just insists that any support for Iran is, functionally, the same as supporting Israel. He even says, and I quote, "Time will reveal they are two faces of the same coin." So, all right, if it's all a big deception, how does it supposedly work? I mean, the author doesn't just make this wild claim and leave it there. He actually provides a specific political model to try and explain the mechanics of this alleged control. The crucial point here, the whole linchpin of this idea, is the theory of controlled opposition. The author argues that a really savvy leader creates a fake enemy on purpose. Why? Because that fake enemy acts like a magnet, attracting all the genuine dissenters. So by getting his real opponents to rally around a secret ally, he effectively contains and neutralizes any true threat to his power. And to try and ground this theory in the real world, the author points to an actual historical figure, Morocco's late King Hassan II. He's presented as this seasoned politician who totally understood this tactic. The author claims the king would create his own manageable opposition just to stop a real, uncontrollable one from ever rising up. Okay, so if this whole thing is a global play, who are the actors? The text lays out a really clear hierarchy of who's pulling the strings and, who's carrying out the orders. Let's see how the author structures this whole thing. So this slide really shows you the rigid structure of the conspiracy as the author sees it. You've got the masters at the top, a term he uses for the group he calls those who have earned wrath. They're the ultimate planners. Then, executing their will, you have the servants. And he assigns this role exclusively to Shia Muslims, using this historical and pejorative term Majus to link them to pre-Islamic Persians. The text really, and I mean really, goes to great lengths to define this servant class. The author uses some incredibly harsh and dehumanizing language to argue that Shia Muslims are just uniquely suited for this role. He claims their religious practices make them inherently subservient, and that this master-servant relationship isn't new. It's historical, it's unbreakable, and it's the very bedrock of this entire conspiracy. Now, the author doesn't just present this worldview as his opinion. No, he claims it's all based on a deep understanding he got from two very specific historical texts. He considers them essential guides for understanding what he calls the truth. First up is Machiavelli's The Prince. According to the text, this isn't just some classic of political theory. It's a practical manual, a playbook for the whole conspiracy. The author literally claims to have studied it relentlessly, over 100 times, so he could understand and even predict the moves of these global manipulators. The second text he says is absolutely essential is The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. He presents this infamous anti-Semitic text as the foundational document, the key to understanding the long-term plans and motivations of the group he calls the Masters. So after laying all of this out, what's the point? What's the key takeaway here? Well, the author's ultimate point is delivered as a very direct and urgent warning to his readers. In this worldview, there's just no middle ground. The logic goes like this. Since Iran is just the other face of the same enemy, defending Iran is exactly the same as defending its masters. And so, according to the author, anyone who does that is either naive, a fool, or they are a knowing traitor to their own people. And this quote right here just brilliantly illustrates the author's final conclusion. His call to action isn't to go fight the masters directly. No, he argues the primary battle has to be fought against the servants. In his view, the only path to victory is to first expose and defeat these secret allies who are working from within. And that brings our explainer to a close. By deconstructing this text, we don't really end up with answers about the world. But what we do get is a much clearer picture of how a certain type of all-encompassing story gets built. It shows us a framework that defines enemies, creates secret connections, and provides a seemingly complete, if really unsettling, explanation for everything happening in the world. Thanks for tuning in.